Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Today is another wonderful day. I'm sure you have your reasons to believe that. We're going to continue with reading The Sacred Magic of the Qabbalah, that's with 2 B's, written by Manly P. Hall. And speaking of 2, we're on part 2 today. And today's focus is going to have a lot to do with the numbers. When dealing with the system of so-called magic, one way to check yourself and to make sure that you're in the right place, dealing with the right correspondences, is by having a library of correspondences that all line up and add up with each other. Now, typically such a library of correspondences includes numbers, astrological symbols and meanings, the planets, the tarot cards, and a few other things. What I'm saying is, your knowledge base of all these different symbols should connect across the board. Just like it says in the Qabbalah, if you can't figure something out, then you use correspondence to figure it out. If there's a missing piece in your puzzle, you just find the correspondences that deal with the rest of the system. For example, if you're dealing with 4s, it's going to be a pretty sure bet that these 4s relate to, somehow, correspond with the 4 elements. So there's going to be one that's more fiery than the other, one that's more earthy, one that's more watery, and one that's more airy. If you're dealing with 3s, there's a huge chance that you're going to be dealing with the 3 gunas, Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva, the active, the passive, and the neutral. Same thing with 5s, 6s, and 7s. Once you learn the patterns, you can figure out anything. So let's get to this book. Peace and greetings to all my sacred magical friends. Peace, peace. Testing, testing, 8, 9. Manly Hall is a pretty thoroughly researched author. So, what he has to say about the numbers should correspond with other things that you may have studied from heavily researched authors. But then again, it's not all about studying books. There has to be a huge element of practice to counterbalance that book study. You don't want to be too much on one side because that makes room for imbalance. That should make sense. It should. You don't want to rely too heavily on practice, but you don't want to rely too heavily on study. There's got to be equal measure of both, because when the 2 come together, they give birth. Again, like I said, we have 3 things here. We have study, we have practice, and we have gnosis. So earlier I said when you deal with a system of 3s, we're more than likely dealing with the 3 gunas. So if the study, we could say, would be the tamasic aspect, the practice would be the rajasic aspect. When you combine those 2, you make room for the sattvic aspect, which is gnosis. Gnosis trumps study and practice. But you're going to be very hard-pressed to get gnosis without study and practice. Capiche? Does it make sense to the world? All right. So, good to see everybody. Peace to Dara Holland. Peace, Richard Tracy. Lance Benefield, peace and greetings. Al Dickey, good to see you. Peace, brother. Kevin Wise, peace, peace always. Mystical Koala, peace. Veronica, peace. Always great to see you. Dub VT, what's good, my brother? MC Maestro, the greatest in the building. Peace, bro. Let's get it cracking. Let's get it cracking. All right. Sacred Magic of the Qabbalah by Manly P. Hall. Part 2. All right. So the mystery of the numbers. Let's get it. According to the ancient wisdom, all numbers came forth out of Ein Sof, the unknown, the dot, the absolute. The one is the primary manifestation, and as such, we are going to consider its power first in its descent out of the dot, and then in its ascent back again into the nature of the dot. Something key to point out that might only be useful to so-called advanced occultists out there. For the most part, we deal with the four elements and the spirits associated with the four elements, and the combination of those dealing with the planets. But there is another aspect of these elemental spirits that's quite rare. It's rare because man doesn't have a direct connection with these spirits. In fact, the only way that I've ever seen contact made is through a liaison, through some other type of middleman spirit. There are spirits, you could say, that are so pure and so removed from man that man doesn't have direct access. Now, the first time you've probably seen this is in Christianity, where we talk about Christ being the intercessor. We talk about Christ being the bridge between man and God. Well, this doesn't only happen in Christianity. In fact, this is a natural part of the whole system. Now, again, most people don't deal with this because this is kind of advanced. You have to have somewhat of a mastery over your personal relationship with the elementals. But there is another aspect that's rarely spoken about in these occult books. And if it is, it's written in code. So the whole reason I'm bringing this up is because that type of spirit relates to the zero, relates to the dot, what he just talked about in that very first line. Even as such that most people don't have access or relationship with this type of spirit, we're moving closer into a time now where more and more people are beginning to figure out how to access this level of spirit. And again, this spirit relates to the zero, to the dot, to the Ein Sof. Let's get back to it. Peace, Alicia M. Peace, Wolf and Syrian 777. Wolf and Syrian says, is that peach soda Bobby was talking about? Might as well be. We'll go with yes. Away, greetings. MC Maestro says, the daemon is intermediary. In older systems of Christianity, the daemon is replaced by the patron saint, Ishtadevata. Many use Jesus here in America. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Now, most people are content with that. That's as far as they need to go based on their karmic development. But there is a way. There is a way to transcend that middleman. Now, ironically, you're going to be dealing with another type of middleman because, like I said, the highest spirit is in such a vibration that it's nearly impossible for mankind to come into direct alignment with it. But there is a middleman that serves as a plug, so to speak, to a greater source. More on that later. All right, 37. Manifesting out of the formless dot, the beginning of all things, is a state of oneness which man calls unity. All things in the world today have one natural origin. So to understand what I'm talking about here, as far as this pure source, you got to understand that line that he just said right there. Right? Anyone who says anything otherwise than this, I'm going to say that they don't have very much experience dealing with the spiritual realm. And that line again was, all things in the world today have one natural origin. Anybody talking conversely to that doesn't know what they're talking about. Again, there are no enemies. We're dealing with something much bigger than Tom, Dick, and Harry. All things began as one, which came forth out of nothing, the unmanifest, by the elongation of the dot. To the ancients, one indicated the unity of source, and a unified source meant equal opportunities for all. And remember, gnosis doesn't mean a guess. Gnosis is the result of study and practice coming into alignment to make room for something greater. Gnosis doesn't mean a guess or a theory or an assumption. Gnosis means there was an equal amount, a necessary amount of study and practice to give birth to pure light. All right? Gnosis is not derived from study, and it's not derived from practice. It's derived from the union of study and practice. Again, someone who tells you otherwise doesn't have gnosis on the matter. And don't just take my word for it, test it for yourself. Compare your past with actual gnosis that you may get from study and practice. Then challenge what I'm saying. And if that isn't enough, verify it in the Vedic texts, because it's in there too. Especially when you study the Sahasrara chakra. But let's continue. If all things had one source, there can be no superiority among them, except that superiority resulting from the victory of action over inaction. Now, somebody here who is a true occultist, tell me what that is referring to. Victory of action over inaction. If you've been a long time, you know that victory of action over inaction is a direct description of number 7. Well, to cut to the chase, because I don't know if anybody knows it, it's been a while since we read that book being The Ladder of Lights. Victory of action over inaction is a reference to Netzach. You know that Netzach, the sphere of Venus, is known as victory, but not the victory of warfare, not the victory of fighting people, the victory of overcoming inaction, overcoming tamas. If you're an artist of any type and you've had a project to do and you've had so much writer's block that you literally can't force yourself to create, the moment when the writer's block ends and all the inspiration comes flooding in, that's the energy of Netzach. That's the energy of Venus. That's the energy of victory of action over inaction. And it will be wise to remember what you did to trigger that flood, because you might need to do it again in the future. You with me? MC Maestro says, that point of figuring out a tarot reading, getting a channel, or learning the lesson from trial is that point of gnosis. It's that same feeling each time. There's no question. Exactly what I'm talking about. There's no question. You don't have to think about it. It's a lightning flash, and it's uncontestable. MC Maestro says, overcoming the vice of Malkuth and Yasad. Netzach is that culminating victory. Yes, absolutely. Which again relates to what I'm talking about as far as this gnosis. Richard Tracy says, hell yeah, I'm with you. Awesome. Let's keep going. In short, we may say that the difference is the result of the diligence of some and the indolence of others. 38. Since the family tree of all people can be traced back to the dot, the form of no thing, and the one, its first outbreathing, there is no place in nature for persons or things which are superior to or holier than others. Remember that. Anything that is talking about superiority or holier than is a form of social control. Because superiority of one human being over another it's a fantasy and a delusion. Because every entity that walks in a human body is an expression of Adam Kadmon. And your personal perspective of Adam Kadmon is what you get out of the human civilization. So now I'm even having to reframe how I think of and talk about the human race or the collective soul. For a while, it was starting to really... I was starting to believe that the collective humanity was a slow, stupid organism. A slow, stupid creature. And I went with that. And more, that's all I began to see. A lumbering, idiotic, unchanging beast that wears pants and a shirt. It calls itself intelligent, but it's truly an animal. That's what I believed. But I'm coming now to realize that the belief came first. When I started to believe that, I started to see that more and more and more, to the point that it begins to get exhausting. I had to reframe that because I realized all spirits are neutral. Literally, every single spirit in existence is neutral. The thing is, these spirits take on the form that we give them. They fill with our intent, and they become that thing that we believe they are. And that's when they begin to do their work. They don't come to you as evil. They don't come to you as good. You paint them as such. Because think about it. If you get some type of spiritual sense, like if something, you might see something move, or you see a spirit, or you feel something. If your first reaction is to term that thing as evil, think about the influences that inspired you to do that. Probably the movies, Hollywood, church, or maybe a past experience. You've got something coming to you from beyond, and you're coloring it with something in your memory banks. So right off the bat, you've doomed this thing to be an enemy of yours. Every spirit comes to you as neutral, unless it is one of those beyond spirits that I mentioned in the beginning. When I say beyond spirit, I mean something that is outside of the range of being an elemental. 9 times out of 10, you're dealing with elementals. You're not actually dealing with the spirit you think you're dealing with, unless you really know what you're doing. And again, like gnosis, when you're dealing with the actual spirit, it's an uncontestable feeling. You know for a fact. It's not a question. So anyone who's like, well, I don't know if I need to verify if I'm dealing with the right entity. If you're on that level of thinking, you probably shouldn't be working with that spirit, right? You don't call somebody's phone number and you're unsure about the number. Because even if you don't have the right number, there's a high chance you're going to call the wrong number. You don't go knock on somebody's door unless you know their address. And if you don't know their address, you're guessing, right? So before working with any spirit, if you want to be certain that you're working with that spirit, number 1, you've got to have the correct correspondences. And number 2, you have to know what it feels like to actually work with a spirit. If you don't know what that feels like, then how do you know that you're doing it correctly? I'll put it like this. Imagine someone that's raised a Christian and has never had a spiritual experience, has never had a feeling of Jesus at all. What are they doing? Right? They may grow old, they may pray every day, they may go to church every Sunday, but if they've never had an experience with actual Christ, how do they know the difference? That's what I mean. If you never actually work with the Spirit, maybe it's time to do research first. Anna Molly, peace. A. Miklich, peace. Underworld God 500, peace. All right, let's keep going. Let us. Aset Aja, peace to you. Hope you're having a good day. I met you in Houston. I still remember that. That was a long time ago. Or maybe it wasn't. Underworld God 500 said, bro, what the fuck? I literally was just saying this to my friend. I literally said that. Wow. Yeah, man. Something wants that message put across. Oh, that's pretty good, Maestro. Maestro says, I asked my Christian friends and coworkers to draw out their process. Reframing their current practice allows me to have them see the occult in a non-evil light. That's a good way to do it. Darth Sidious, the Purple Man, always used to say that if you want to get across to someone who's stubborn, you have to be indirect. You have to. You're not going to convince anybody who's stubborn by being upfront with them. It's got to be indirect. Most people don't seem to realize that, so they continue to try to fight and force. But if somebody's stubborn, you're not going to be able to be direct with them. It has to be indirect. So now you got to use your imagination or give up that fight altogether. Most of the time, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to convince somebody of something that they don't come to an understanding of on their own. All right, let's continue. I hope you guys had a fantastic solar eclipse, because my ritual worked too damn good. Way too good. I called upon something that won't leave me alone. But that's what I wanted. All right, where were we? So again, we were talking about there is nothing superior. No person is superior. No person is holier than anyone else, because every human being is a direct descendant of Adam Kadmon, or as he put it, this original source. Every single person comes out of the original source. Anything after that original source is a human-made illusion. Human-made illusion, which means it doesn't hold weight after death. Race doesn't hold weight after death. Superiority of your race doesn't hold weight after death. Inferiority of other races doesn't hold any water whatsoever after your death. Because guess what, genius? When you die, you're not a color. You're not a race when you die. That alone should make it to where race doesn't have anything to do with spirituality. But I digress. That's something you're going to have to figure out on your own. Yeah, so that's where we were. All things in unity have equal opportunity and equal possibility.
No thing and no one can honestly say that he never had a chance. I firmly believe that. No thing and no one can honestly say that he never had a chance. I sympathize with your sob story. However, you're not going to fool me into believing that you didn't have a chance. I knew this as a child. Nobody dies without an opportunity to get right. Nobody. Either the opportunity was never recognized, or if recognized, the individual did not profit by it or accept the lessons which it sought to teach. Don't be a knucklehead, people. Don't be a knucklehead. Difference in the desire to accomplish and the intelligence of procedure are solely responsible for the inequalities which we see in the world. So look, difference in the desire to accomplish, right? Some people want to accomplish things, other people don't really care. So the difference in the desire to accomplish and the intelligence of procedure, right? Do you even know what you're doing? Do you want to do it? And do you know how to do it? Those two things are solely responsible for the inequalities we see in the world. Shoot, that's a gem right there too. Do you want it? Do you know how to get it? Do you want it? Do you know how to get it? Those are the two things responsible for the inequalities we see in the world. Within his own soul, everyone has the possibility of ultimate perfection. That's that crown chakra. That's that Sahasrara chakra. Everybody has the potential for it, but everyone doesn't access the Sahasrara chakra. Why does my camera keep freezing? Anna Molly says, some really kicking energy lately. Good stuff. I agree with you. I'm in agreement with you. So again, everyone has the potential for perfection. And that perfection is represented by the 7th chakra at the crown. Notice that the other 6 chakras are located within the range of the shape of the body. Apparently, what most people don't understand is that the chakras are not inside of your physical body. You got a physical body, which is called the manomaya. It's called the Annamaya kosha. Annamaya kosha, that's the physical body. Then you have an etheric body. These texts call it the subtle body, and that's called the pranamaya kosha. Within that subtle body, within that pranamaya kosha, within that etheric body, that's where your chakras actually are. And that's the body that operates on the etheric plane. So in the physical plane, your physical body has organs: brain, heart, lungs, liver, spleen, appendix, testes, ovaries, etc. There's no need for those things on the other planes. That's literally for the physical plane only. So the etheric body has chakras. The chakras are the organs of the etheric body, of the subtle body. Now, this stuff, again, originates in India, hence why the physical body is known as the Annamaya kosha, which is the body, the sheath made of food. It is the consumption of food which gives sustenance to the physical body, the Annamaya kosha. The Pranamaya kosha, the etheric body, consumes prana. It is sustained by prana. So instead of having a stomach and a liver and kidneys, the etheric body has 7 chakras. 6 of them are active in a lot of people. So these 6 chakras, they transmute prana. That's why it's called the prana body. So the chakras are not in the physical body, they're in the etheric body, and that's what the etheric body uses to sustain itself. Now there is the potential of the crown chakra. There's the potential of it. But just like the other chakras are fed, sometimes different foods carry prana, sometimes spiritual activities carry prana. But that 7th chakra does not awaken accidentally. It is only awakened with intentional work. The crown chakra is awakened and activated when you sustain it intentionally. So everyone has the opportunity, just like you said, for perfection, but you have to know what to feed that crown chakra to activate it. Let's get back to this book. Within his own soul, everyone has the possibility of ultimate perfection and the daily opportunity for relative perfection. These possibilities and opportunities remain dormant, however, until man himself awakens them by aspiration and activity. Right? That's what I just said. You got to be doing it on purpose. You have to aspire to it. Again, look what he said up here. The desire to accomplish and the intelligence of procedure. You got to want it, and you got to know how to get it. Let me make sure I remember that. Perfection, at least relative perfection, is the undeniable goal of all things, and the length of time we are forced to struggle for it depends largely upon the abilities which we unfold and the application we make of our newborn faculties. It is a fact that if you cease to meditate with tantric practice and or you cease to do your mantras, you will eventually fall off the path. It is absolute. Science teaches that all forms are various combinations of one primitive essence. Hot biscuits. Nuru, peace. Peace and greetings. Science teaches that all forms are various combinations of one primitive essence. This essence, or premium Heil, is the substance of the dot and manifests through its personification and extension in the one. A stone, a flower, a man, and a god are all stages in the differentiation of one life. A vegetable is in the process of becoming an animal. An animal is a stage in the unfoldment of a planet, while an electron is a god in the process of becoming. All things are stages in the expression of one connected life, which at the present time is engaged in the task of liberating itself from the dense crystals of physical substance. Most people don't actually work with the spirits that they think they're working with, and that goes for both good and evil. A true demon, if we're thinking about Hollywood demons or what most people are afraid of, like the actual harmful, dissonant type of energetic life form, it has one purpose. And one way to escape dogma and superstition is to remember not to attribute spiritual beings with human desires. So God isn't seeking to punish you, and a demon isn't seeking to hurt you. That's not what these type of energies do. I mentioned before about the etheric plane or the pranamaya kosha. These entities, for the most part, reside on that plane, which means that they too consume prana. Now, beings that live on the etheric plane don't produce prana. That's why they consume it. Just like the way that human beings don't produce food, we have to consume plants and other animals in order to receive the sustenance. So these etheric beings consume prana that is generated by animals, plants, and humans as well. So we're all being fed upon by elemental spirits and other spirits. It's not a bad thing. There's nothing to be afraid of, right? If you consider that a bad thing, then maybe you should stop eating, right? It's just the cycle of life. That's how it goes. Everything that you do produces some type of energy vibration, and that is being consumed by something. When we deal with these so-called demons, like the actual dissonant things that nobody wants to work with, those actual things, their sole purpose, they're tamasic type of creatures, and their sole purpose is to condense consciousness into matter. Their sole purpose is to solidify consciousness into matter. That's what a demon is. It doesn't have emotions, and it doesn't want to hurt or kill. Its only purpose is to condense light into matter. That's what the purpose of demons are in the universe. Now, I don't know what the purpose of hornets and wasps are, but everything else has a purpose to exist. Koi Sewell, peace. Christine Blue, peace. 41. All thought is a unity. All natural forces which man uses in his various manifestations are one in their causation. All thought is a unity, and all natural forces come from the same cause. Right? A person's ability to think does not depend upon chance, but upon the attuning his consciousness to the planes of thought, so that the mental powers may be energized. A person's ability to think does not depend upon chance. That means the things that have come to your mind wasn't just random. You know that. But what it actually depends upon is the attuning of your consciousness to the mental plane. And there's different ways to attune your consciousness, aren't there? Anna Molly says, many wasps will keep pests in check. They can be little guards of the garden. Okay. All right. I'll allow it. So, a person's ability to think does not depend upon chance, but upon the attuning of his consciousness to the planes of thought, so that his mental powers may be energized. Those who attune themselves to the various planes of nature governing the major divisions of life will receive the influx of thought, life, or power that dwells in and manifests through that particular plane. That's a heavy gem. If you didn't pick that up, that's a heavy gem. Why is that a heavy gem? Because if you take what he's saying here and you apply it to anything else, you'll start to understand how this game works. Human beings, at least in our physical bodies and our empirical minds that deal with the five senses, are at the bottom of the food chain of consciousness, meaning everything happens and then we do something about it. Right? Everything happens and then we do something about it. Where's it happening at? Well, if we just talked about how there's a unity, the unity is still in its infinite, boundless nature. But because we are involved with time and space, and a beautiful manifestation called Prakriti, because we're involved with her, the unity of boundless data is now stretched out through space and time. A few lines ago, he mentioned how the zero becomes the one because the zero is stretched out into the one. Well, in that stretching out, all the data that was before not really doing anything is now stretched across the planes of existence, from the causal plane to the mental plane to the astral plane to the etheric plane, and then finally to the physical plane. So by the time you have a thought or an impulse or an idea or an emotion, it has traveled a very long way before you began to express it. Now, it isn't simply just a receiving, right? Most people, most of the time, are simply just receiving. However, it doesn't have to be that way. Just like there's a receiving, you can also he used the word attune. It's like a radio. You can listen to one radio station for a little bit, hoping to catch your favorite song, but then maybe you feel like listening to some country music, and you might attune that station to Down South Swamp 3505 so you can tap into what you want to hear. So look what he says. A person's ability to think does not depend upon chance. You don't accidentally just turn the radio station to a great idea, but upon the attuning of his consciousness to the planes of thought, so that his mental powers may be energized. And what is this energization we're talking about? Prana. Again, it's prana, which is the movement between consciousness and matter, right? Down on the physical plane, we don't have the faculties to just consume prana. I mean, we do if we practice. So we eat food and we breathe air. And it's through those two functions, and drink water. Through those three functions is how we energize ourselves with prana. But the etheric body doesn't need food and water because it doesn't have organs to chew and swallow and digest. It takes the prana straight up. And the same thing happens up in the mental plane and the astral plane. The prana is circulated, but in a very fine and subtle way. So check this out. When you go to give offerings to your deities, to your elemental friends, what you're actually doing is you've charged that food with your intention and the residual prana that is already on the food. When you leave it there, the intent now connects that you intend to give this prana to that etheric being. So no, the spirit isn't supposed to actually chew the food up off your plate. The food's still going to be there, but the prana, the energetic resonance of that food, has been consumed by this etheric being. In fact, it began to feed as soon as you desired to give the offering. It doesn't start when you put the plate out there. It doesn't start when you scrape some food off. It starts when you decided to do that. That makes sense to somebody. Peace, sunshine chick. Always good to see you. Peace, unicorn universe. Indeed, it is a lovely one. So, again, a person's ability to think does not depend upon chance, but upon the attuning of his consciousness to the planes of thought, so that his mental powers may be energized. Prana. Those who attune themselves to the various planes of nature, right? So he's using an example here. The example he's using is nature. And I got to remember this too, because this is a good one. Those who attune themselves to the various planes of nature governing the major divisions of life, right? So there's a nature governing your finances. There's a nature governing your home and its cleanliness. There's a nature governing your physical body. There's a nature governing relationships between lovers. There's a nature between all types of major divisions of life. So when you attune yourself to the various planes of nature governing the major divisions of life, you receive influx of thought. This ain't nothing brand new. You do this all the time. So you receive the influx of thought, life, or power that dwells in and manifests through that particular plane. So, for example, if we're dealing with the nature that governs the major division of, let's say, romantic relationship between two people, if you attune yourself to that plane that governs romantic relationship over people, you're going to receive an influx of thought, life, and power that dwells in that realm. And it will manifest in your life because you're tapped into it. Right? Is that what you got from this sentence? If so, you're already on the right track. Don't blame nothing on nobody else. For something to manifest in your life, you have to tap into it. You have to have tapped into it. It doesn't just happen. You tune into that radio station. Unstents. Peace. $42. The number one also governs the reason for man's labor here. There is but one motive in all his works. There is but one end to all his labors. He must seek to unite his intelligence with that of his Creator, the Ancient of Days. This he does by adjusting his organisms to the body centers of the macrocosmic man. This sequential adjustment of internal centers of consciousness with eternal qualities we call evolution. This is why we come into alignment, right? This is why, I mean, think about it. Do you know why you look online and you're like, my root chakra is imbalanced? So you go look up how to balance your root chakra, and then you find a crystal or some food to eat, and then you do something, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I feel like my chakras are balanced, I'm good to go. Well, what you're doing in that process, what you're doing when you do that, is you're attuning the organs of your subtle body. I just mentioned that, right? We just talked about the etheric body and its organs. You're attuning this etheric body and its organs to the higher aspect, the infinite man, the infinite human, right? This infinite human, like he mentioned before in this very book, 2 pages ago, every person comes out of this singular source. Now that singular source, it exists as it is in a very, very high plane. Where we exist is seemingly far removed. We're so far removed from the source that we think that we're billions of people. Look at this. We think that we are billions of people, right? So we begin to manifest sickness and disease because we don't know any better. We simply don't. And like you said 2 pages ago, the whole reason for the difference of equality in everyone is whether or not you know what you want to do and you want to do it, and do you know how to do it. Most people don't know how to rejuvenate themselves through meditation or spiritual practice. Most people don't know how to manifest the life that they want. Right? And then there's a lot of people who do want to do that, but they don't know how. There's people who know how but don't do it. Believe it or not, there's a lot of stuff that I know that I don't do. But the thing is, if you know what the prototype man is, Adam Kadmon, and you know how to come into alignment with that, this is the beginning of evolution. This is why you sit down and meditate and visualize your chakras. You weren't the first one with chakras. Those automatically manifested based on the prototype. One manifestation of those chakra points are the planets. This should be making sense, especially after reading the mystical Qabbalah and the horde of books that we've been reading. What's good, Breezy? Maximilian, peace. All right. Let's get to it. The one in its return to unity. Before I forget, yeah, good stuff. All right, the one in its return to unity, 43. The one source of life and the first principle thereof manifests itself in the world as a multiplicity. The one cause, the eternal unit, is diversified into the millions of existing forms, all of which bear witness to the infinite diversity of powers concealed within the structure of the primitive one. Bear witness to the infinite diversity concealed within the infinite one, within the primitive one, within the structure of the primitive one. So hopefully you got the image of the Qabbalah in your mind. And I just mentioned how the chakras of Adam Kadmon can be represented by the planets. If you notice on the cover of the mystical Qabbalah text, there's the tree of life with those planetary spheres, and the outline of a person. Now, like I said in the beginning of this video, the way that you chickadee check yourself before you wreck yourself is by understanding how to cross-reference correspondences. The numbers should line up with the astrology. The astrology should line up with the tarot. The tarot should line up with the Qabbalah. It should all line up. And then anything else that you come across spiritually should line up with that. The reason that there's rules and structure for magic isn't because, oh, I have to do what somebody else said to do. Well, I'm just do it my way. No, it's not like that. It's because there are patterns. Things line up with patterns. When we talk about universal laws, these aren't the same as man-made laws. Man-made laws are simply made so that people don't act like beasts, right? There's some people who, if there weren't laws, would be savage. Even today, I'm willing to wager a very large number of people would be savages without man-made laws. That's what man-made laws are for. They're not for everybody. They're to govern the savages. But since there's really no way to tell the difference from the outside, everyone has to obey the law. Now, universally in the macrocosm, things are different. There's not a person making laws. The laws are the result of cosmic patterns. The same way, if you have a musical instrument like a piano or a guitar, there's certain notes that'll line up and make a chord, right? Nobody wrote that down. That's just how the frequency works. When those different notes vibrate together in harmony, it creates something powerful. Likewise, the streams of energy that circulate in the universe, there are patterns that crisscross. Some are dissonant and some are harmonious. These are the universal laws, right? So it's not something somebody made. And when we're dealing with spiritual practice, the human-made law, assuming that the teacher that you follow or the teacher that you study is really about their shit, assuming that they're really about their shit, the laws that man creates ideally are attuned to those spiritual laws. You get it? Breezy says, when we transition, do you believe we get to have infinite creation potential for us to do as we please? I was watching Panic and he mentioned this. Well, I mean, the thing is, if you're going to have infinite creative potential, then you'd have to understand that you already do. It's not that you don't, you already do. You're doing it all the time. Do you want to go to another planet Earth? Or are you trying to be liberated from existence? Because as long as you are under a certain level, you're still in the same place. You go to the astral plane every night, don't you? But you don't feel like a god creating the world. You are in the physical plane, the etheric, the astral, and the mental. You're in all those planes at different times of the day and sometimes simultaneously. It's all the same place. You're in the wheel of samsara. You're in existence. It's just happening at maybe a different angle, but it's all the same thing. Now, if you really want to talk about transitioning, the true death, the true transition, the true liberation is coming up out of this whole thing, right? You've heard people say, oh, we got to get out the matrix. Well, outside of the matrix is not another matrix, right? You don't wake up and you're in a stinky, dirty boat or a ship, running from robots. You're still in the same place, just at a different level. True liberation is no longer requiring this type of experience. Why? Because you reach what we've been reading about here. You reach the zero. You reach the prototype. There's no need to create another world. It's enough worlds already created. Like, everything is created already. Anything that is manifest is part of the manifest dimension. So anything that you can come up with your mind already exists right here in Prakriti. Its name is Prakriti. Her name is Prakriti. That's why we call her the Matrix. in her infinite womb. Any level of existence is inside of that infinite womb. The only thing that's outside of Prakriti is non-existence. So you got to make a choice. That's the red pill or the blue pill. Do you want to die and then just come back here at a different level? Or are you trying to get up out of mama's house entirely? Breezy said, I'd say it's not about escape, it's about mastery. All forms of beingness require a matrix, a space to exist and act. Exactly. And what I'm saying is that the matrix, the space to exist and act, is there's only one of them. It's one of them, and that's called Prakriti. Or, I mean, call it whatever you want. Call it whatever you want. Universe, whatever. Multiverse, metaverse. There's one of them. So there's either existence or non-existence. Existence is being within that. What the ancient sciences, the yoga, Samkhya, and all that stuff teaches is liberation. And when they talk about liberation, they talk about getting out, getting out, getting out. So if you ask me what mastery is, I would say that mastery is coming to a point that you're extremely comfortable with the concept of getting out. And what do I mean by that? I mean that most everyone here has unfinished desires, and those unfinished desires are going to cause us to reincarnate at some level, right? At some level, you're going to feel like there's something you didn't do, you didn't finish it, or something you want more of. As my man George said a long time ago, even the desire for another if I could just bite that Hershey bar one more time, if I could just have another rack of ribs, even something like that will cause the consciousness to gravitate back towards the center of Prakriti. So when I say mastery, I'm talking about mastering desire, having no need to do anything else. I mean, yeah, if you're in a physical body, you know, you got to get money and do this, that, and the third. For sure. It's necessary to sustain the body. But once you die, mastery is being able to leave all that unfinished business with that body. Leave it there. If I didn't make 100 million, if I didn't have a 12-some, you know what I'm saying, if all the stuff I didn't do, and I die before I did it, I have to be comfortable with saying, yep, it was a good ambition. We didn't get it, but that means I didn't need to. Let's go. Anything other than that, you're coming back. And that's not a threat, because mostly that's a karmic thing. We don't make that decision down here. That decision's already made. Because we're not living for us. We're part of an ecosystem. As this book is talking about, there's a much greater intelligence at play. Much greater intelligence at play. Like I said, there's the 0 point, which is everything unmanifested. But when that 0 becomes stretched into 1, all that data has to now go through time and space, which means you're a part of that. You have it. That's why they say you have a purpose here. Even if your purpose is to step on an ant at 12 years old, as long as you do that purpose, you serve that purpose. Now, you may have to step on that ant in 500 years from now, which means that your genetics are going to have to continue to move on until you get to that point where you fulfill your purpose. That's what karma is. It's not, oh, I did something wrong to somebody and now karma's going to get me. No, karma is that outplay of cause and effect. And I'm talking about the Big Bang, the original cause, not a cause that you did yesterday. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday, because what you did yesterday was the result of a prior cause. Everything that you receive in your mind to do is the result of a prior cause. Oh boy. I'm having some heavy deja vu right now. I legit feel like I've done this specifically already. Sheesh. Sheesh. Prakriti. Cybernet says, we are all here to do what we are all here to do. The Oracle from the Matrix. Hell yeah. Matthew Watson, peace, brother. Oh, goodness gracious. Alright, we gotta get back to this text. MC Maestro says, Trav, if you can look up the Methuselahite school, your inclination about your purpose might have a clue there. Alright, I'm gonna write that down. Matthew Watson, you're my anime friend. Are you keeping up with the current Boruto, the current Naruto manga? My cousin just gave me a full breakdown of what they're going through right now. And, whew. That shit is lining up directly with what I've been studying. But for anybody, has anybody been following the new Boruto manga? I'm sure I'm saying it right. What was that? Methuselahite school. Yeah. All right, let's continue. The One in its return to unity. So again, the one source of life at the first principle thereof manifests itself in the world as a multiplicity. The one cause, the eternal unit, is diversified into the millions of existing forms, all of which bear witness to the infinite diversity of powers concealed within the structure of the primitive one. Like I said earlier, you know, we're so perceivably removed from the source that we believe that we are billions of people in a world full of Google zillions of life forms, not realizing that we are the same thing. That's the veil of Maya. That's the illusion. Since this unified causation expresses itself as a multiplicity, we recognize it as a stream of ever-evolving individualities pouring out of the abyss of space through the one and into the manyness. Now, what he's describing right there is Chakma. And check this out. That metaphor is, you know, a lot of the stuff is sexual. It's a metaphor for ejaculation. Out of the one comes the many, right? And guess what? They return back to the one. And the process repeats infinitely. Expansion and contraction. That's why you breathe in and out. That's why you live and you die. That's why the sun comes up and goes down. It's a symptom of existence. Which means that which exists outside of reality, that which exists outside of the matrix, that which exists outside of the womb is non-changing. That's why the Bible says God is the same as he was yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Because God don't exist within time and space. Or Shiva don't exist in time and space. Or, right, whatever name we want to give this infinitely higher being, because whatever name we give it isn't its name. That's just what we have in our minds to help us think of it, consider it. It doesn't exist within time and space. And it is one of the, it's what I was talking about before, that we don't have direct access to. We have to use an intercessor. We have to use some type of middle agent because it is so foreign. So here's the thing. Shiva is not a blue man in space meditating somewhere, right? No. That's an image that man has created to help us consider what Shiva is. anything that has a form, anything that exists at all whatsoever in any way, shape, sound, vibration, color, is part of Prakriti. However, that symbol helps us to consider the infinite God. It's not a blue man in space somewhere. If you calculate everything that exists and can be experienced for all time, just try in your brain to think about every single thing that can ever possibly be from beginning to end and beyond. Now, contain all of that into an egg. Contain all of that into an egg shape. That is Prakriti, that's the matrix, that's the womb, that is existence, that is manifestation. Literally nothing is outside of this. Right? So anything you can think of, aliens, Pleiadians, vegans, nofap, semen retention, every single thing you can think of is going to be in this egg. There's nothing exempt. Now, what exists, or should I say, what is beyond this egg, that's Shiva. That's God. But we have no way to cognize. We don't even have a name for it, a word for it. We don't have a sigil for it. We don't have the faculties to perceive it. This is where we start talking about spiritual development, because you have to literally evolve the faculties to experience it, because it's not going to happen in something you see, smell, taste, hear, or feel. It's extrasensory. It's metaphysical, which means it's beyond. So again, like I said before, 9 times out of 10, the entities you think you're dealing with, you're actually not, because they must be perceived in a way that the human is not designed to perceive them. Yee! Cybernet says, are you familiar with Frank J. Tipler's Omega Point theory? I am not. I am not. I like what he said here about this unified causation expressing itself as a multiplicity. We recognize it as a stream, right? A stream of ever-evolving individualities pouring out of the abyss of space. And when I think about Prakriti, when I do Tattva Shuddhi, this is how I see it. We know that everything that exists before us, if you look around your room, right? Look over there at that thing over there, that other thing, that thing you need to get rid of because it's probably broken, and that thing up there. All these different things around you didn't always exist in this state, right? 10 years ago, they existed in a different state. 50 years ago, all the particles and aspects of the matter of this thing that you're looking at existed in a different state. 1,000,000 years ago, right? Everything that exists is it. Let's say, for example, you can look at that. Remember Doctor Strange, where he was learning that spell with the apple, and he waved his hand over it, and the apple became eaten and rotten. Then he waved his hand back, and it was pure. If you could imagine that with all of existence, you'll see that everything is just a flowing, shifting, gray mass, right? Everything. That's what Prakriti is. If you could see reality for what it actually is, without the veil of Maya, it would look like this infinite gloop just flowing. So he says here, since this unified causation expresses itself as a multiplicity, we recognize it as a stream of ever-evolving individualities pouring out of the abyss of space through, right? This stream is pouring through the one and into the many. This one is like a ray of light which spreads out to be finally swallowed up in darkness as the spirit is enmeshed in form. All differentiation must be unified without the loss of rational individuality before even a relative state of perfection is attainable. First of all, I gotta highlight that again. This book is literally getting better and better with each page. Like, you have to sit with these lines and like really flesh them out. Don't just look at these words and then call it a day. Yeah, I read it. He's conveying something here. He's conveying something here. But check this out. All differentiation must be unified without the loss of rational individuality before even a relative state of perfection is attainable. So think about that. We just talked about the differentiation, right? But here's the trick. That differentiation must be unified, right? Going back to the source, talking about the one, all differentiation, including you and me, and the food that you just ate, and the person you met yesterday, all differentiation must be unified. Here's the trick. Without the loss of rational individuality. The unfortunate talked about this. Going down to Malkuth and coming back up, you might lose your body, but you're supposed to keep everything else. As far as the individual component of consciousness. Before even a relative state of perfection is attainable. So before we can even reach perfection, you've got to be able to know how to hold yourself after the body's finished. Or you're gonna have to, or you'll get more practice until you get it right. That's the point for practicing astral projection. Not because it's a cool party trick, but because you're getting your practice in before you have to do it. Keep in mind, it's called a spiritual practice. You practice sports, football, basketball. You practice to prepare yourself for the game. So they call it a spiritual practice for a reason. That might change your feelings about, I don't want to meditate. I don't have time to just sit there all day long. Well, one day you're going to sit there for eternity. So it might be wise to figure out how to navigate that. Y'all all right? What time is it? 9:34? We're at the hour and 13-minute mark. West side. Yeah. All right. Consciousness in man is always growing. We use the word growing to express the idea of spreading out over the area of its bodies. Notice that when he talks about man, we're still talking about the atom Kadmon, the infinite macrocosm, right? The spirit person who we are all modeled after. So consciousness in man is always growing, spreading out over every person at their own time. Its path is from unconscious oneness to semi-conscious manyness. So look at this right here, unconscious oneness. Don't sleep on these sleeping folks. There's no need to criticize them, make fun of them, or call them stupid or none of that. In a way, they're doing better because they don't have to think about following the path. They're on autopilot. And just like anything that's on autopilot, it's tuned in to the mainframe. So people who are NPCs are following the program. They're doing what Prakriti needs them to do. They're doing what Adam Kadmon Purusha needs them to do. Right? So look at this. Consciousness spreading out over the area of its bodies. Right? Its path is from unconscious oneness to semi-conscious manyness, and then back again to super-conscious unity. That's the path. From unconscious oneness, we could say NPCs, semi-conscious manyness, that's where we at, right? And then finally, super conscious unity. So it isn't okay. So we were talking earlier, right? Breezy asked in the chat about passing on to the next life and creating worlds and stuff like that, right? We had that conversation about how once that transition is made, there should be no desire to come back. Well, here's the thing. The Unfortunate talked about this. Manly P. Hall just said this previously. Once that physical body is done, those other bodies, right, the etheric body should be done, and the astral body should be done, and the mental body should be done. And when I say done, what I mean is they should have knowledge of themselves. The physical body, that's why they say know yourself. Once you physically know what you are, you don't need to come back here to learn it. Once on the etheric level you know who you are, you don't need to come back. Right? What we're talking about is retaining a sense of unity, not me being me when I go into the astral plane. Not exactly that, but I'm remembering the aspect of self that is God already. So when you go to your etheric plane and your imagination, you should be acting as God, not begging God, not teaming up with God. You should be acting as God. When you astral project, you should be acting as God. When you're in the mental plane, these should be your thoughts, all of them. And then finally, if you're able to do that, by the time you make it that far, you begin to liberate yourself automatically, because you know that you're not Prakriti. We're here because we think that we are this matrix. We think that we are Prakriti. We think that we are all this stuff. We think that we're separate. So the only way to get out of this matrix is to realize that you are not this matrix. Somebody heard what I said. And somebody can verify this with the ancient Vedic texts. I did a psyop on myself, and it was successful. I was able to look down and see myself as I am in my dream. I don't think I've ever been able to do that before. I mean, I have, but not like this. I was working with these elementals, and I was dissolving them to extract their Akashic nature, right? And at some point, the machine broke, because somebody wasn't doing their part of the job, so the machine broke. So we had to call for repairs. This is my dream, by the way. Had to call for repairs, and then these two big-ass demons came out of nowhere. They're supposed to be intimidating and scary and all that stuff, and I'm just like, they're trying to tell me what to do, and I'm like, no, y'all need to be doing what I say. And they looked at me and they said, well, if anybody's wearing a long cloak like that, then we kind of have to obey them. Then I looked down and saw what I was wearing, and I became lucid. That became my trigger, because I saw myself. Then I began to control that dream. At the very end of it, it pretty much, I'm not going to say the exact names, but it told me a secret name of the sun and the moon. It told me that if when they come into alignment, it's going to open the gate for light to pass through. And I completely forgot that there was going to be a solar eclipse in 2 days. Lo and behold, there it was. I had a hyper successful ritual, possibly the best. And I don't mean dramatic with a bunch of candles and shit. I mean the result came through better than I anticipated. And it wasn't for material stuff. It was for something that cannot be taken away. I love it. All right. Nobody wants to hear about that. Let's hear about this. So again, we're talking about the path of consciousness, which is always growing from unconscious oneness to semi-conscious minyness, then back again to super-conscious unity. When he returns to his source again, however, man has the circle of a completed cycle to add to the extended point of first expression. So check that out. We go from a dot to a line and back to a dot. He's describing the process of Kether to Chakma. This is symbolized by the number 10. Oh, excuse me. He's talking about the entire path of the tree. So this can be symbolized by the number 10, which stands for the completion of the first round, for it is the one and the round, or cipher. The one and the round. 1, 0, 10. It means that the one has returned to itself after circumscribing the circle of minyness. Cool. "45. The young soul is a unity of unconscious possibilities. It is one, and yet has in potentiality endless differentiation. For it has not as yet split up its rays through individualization. It is asleep. The old soul, after its wanderings, is again a oneness, containing within itself the possibilities that it has awakened into dynamic powers. For having split up its rays to gain experience, it has again united them to a single end. The young soul is the expression of one pouring itself into manyness in search of experience. The old soul has increased its oneness to contain all diversity and all manyness, and still remains a unit." Did you catch that? A young soul is so fresh that it isn't really anything except pure light. An old soul has triumphed because it has collected many experiences and remains individualized. See, the young soul, after every experience, becomes that experience. It takes experience and maturity for that young soul to start to realize what it is. I mean, think about it. A young soul incarnates as so many different life forms, and each one of them is new and special. You come out as a frog and you think you're a frog, then you die and you're a cat. Well, I guess I'm a cat, right? Then you die and you become a tree. Well, I guess I'm a tree. And that process keeps happening until eventually that young soul starts to see a pattern. It starts to recognize the laws of the universe, which I said earlier are these patterns, and it begins to think, I'm not a frog, I'm not a tree, maybe I'm something different. And after each incarnation, that feeling gets stronger and stronger and stronger until it starts incarnating as a human being. And it lives a life and says, oh, I'm this. And it dies and says, damn, I was that. And that was the most complex experience. I want to do that again. Wasn't enough of it. And it keeps incarnating until it once again remembers, wait a minute, I'm not a person at all. That's when the young soul starts to become an old soul, starts to retain all these experiences. So when we talk about this higher self, that's what we're talking about. The higher self is that behind the scenes unit that is recognizing the patterns behind all the manifestations. And once the manifestation itself realizes, whoa, I was never this, now we can continue this journey. To consider Earth as a prison, to consider manifestation as a prison, indicates a lack of wisdom. Who do you believe is imprisoning you? Other than yourself, of course. When we say you are God, we don't mean that you're some kingpin stomping around the universe, punishing enemies and telling people what to do. No. We mean that you're beyond this experience altogether. That means that there's nothing here that you can do or think of that is superior to what you actually are. Tick-tock, and we don't stop. 46. If all things are phases in the unfoldment of one thing, and we are seeking to understand that one thing, what is the logical course to pursue? Well, obviously, there is but one answer. If manifestations are reflections of itself, the only way to understand its nature is to master the gamut of its moods. What could he mean by this? What could he mean by this? If its manifestations are reflections of itself, the only way to understand its nature is to master the gamut of its moods. Those who are masters of the complete expression of divine manifestation are masters of the divine will. As long as a single link is missing, man cannot know his maker. As all things combined in proper proportions form the body of the grand man, so all these things combined in the same proportions on a smaller scale produce the transmuted terrestrial atom, or the symbol of species. Thank you, Sunshine Chick. I knew somebody out there was listening to what I was putting down. That's what I'm talking about. That's why I say always good to see you. Because you be on it, doggone it. Exactly. That's why evocation and sorcery are a tried and true method for evolution. Not because you're supposed to be around here sicking demons on everybody that you're mad at. Not because you want to use the spirits to do this, that, and the third, but because you are beginning to understand the different moods of your higher self, of your soul. You're beginning to understand that you are more than what you have been convinced that you are. And it's only through experience can you know that. I can't tell you that and you understand it. And you can't summon one spirit and understand it. You've got to work with many different types before you start to see the bigger picture, which is even you are one of those things. So if you ain't no different from these spirits that you're summoning, what are you? Right? And then your gears start to turn and you start to expand your perspective. And until you do that, you're not worthy of being able to master the divine will. Not because I said you're not worthy, but because you haven't proved it to yourself, to your soul. It's not something that you can click on TikTok and you just have it. It takes a combination, like I said in the beginning of this video, combination of study and practice. Because through the study and the practice, in sufficient measure, gnosis comes down. MC Maestro says microposipus. But the realizations that we are not the components of our personal cosmos and that we are not the parts. Look at it. When I was a kid, I had a big bin full of toys of all kinds. Ninja Turtles and Arnold Schwarzenegger with half his face burned off as the Terminator, and Legos and all types of different things. And as I played with these, I naturally put them into a big city, and each one of them had a role. There was a mayor, there was the police force or the superheroes, and there were the bad guys. We naturally just put these different figures into their place. But at the end of that session, all the multiplicity of those figures resolve back into me. And the same thing happens when your physical body has completed its task. The higher self who's playing with these toys withdraws, and you experience that reality. And after a while, all the higher selves withdraw themselves, etc. ad nauseum. "47. All things move." Actually, I'm gonna have to go back through this once or twice. Valis, peace. Valis says the Hebrew word Ephraim means to be fruitful. It's a mantra for gaining astral powers. Peace, Jewel 512. 47. All things move and evolve as diversity in unity. That includes all things. Move and evolve as diversity in unity. Once again, as we sleep and dream, we are so perceptibly disconnected from ourselves that we think that we are billions of people. That's what we believe. But the truth is, there is one organism. And all things move and evolve as diversity and unity. Just like your organs and your blood cells and all that other stuff is moving as an ecosystem. Likewise, you and everything in life in this very second is all connected to one overarching being. It would make sense for most of the pieces and parts of this ecosystem be put on autopilot. It would just make sense, because if they weren't, there would be pure chaos and things just would not flow. So it would make sense that the majority of this system is automated. That's why they call it a higher intelligence, because this higher intelligence knows how this thing works and knows what needs to go where and how, when and why, for who and for what. The individual human being who relies on his five senses simply hasn't been here long enough to understand how anything works. So we literally have to prove to existence that we're worthy of driving the ship. It just wouldn't make sense to work any other kind of way. Sheesh. Let us take, for example, a man with a bag of seeds to plant. He scatters the seed all over the field. Each minute each minute particle grows and bears fruit tenfold. He gathers the fruit and, after removing the seed, returns it to the bag, and now he has 10 times as much as he had before. The simile is applicable to the unfoldment of man, who, passing through diversity, multiplies his acquirements, and, finally, as the old soul gathers the fruitage of his works and returns with them to unity. In place of the one latent possibility he originally brought with him, he carries back 10 dynamic powers. Who caught the metaphor? I'm not going to break that one down. Jeez Louise. Jewel 512 says, I was a couple of minutes back. Girl, I'm a couple centuries back. MC Maestro says, True will collects the virtues of the tree. Yes, this is very much Kabbalistic. Very much Kabbalistic. When the higher self puts its toys back into the basket, you better believe this incarnation will be one of them. Oh, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. Who's going to heaven? What if it wasn't just some mystery god in the sky governing everybody? What if there was an individual higher self collectively experiencing through different manifestations? And the manifestations that were not so useful, not so appropriate, can get tossed into the abyss, since they won't be crossing it. Interesting thought. All right, that's a really good line. Study it. You might get something deep out of it. Number 48, realizing this fundamental unity of all form and all life, manifesting through infinite diversity, infinite time, and infinite space, as Herbert Spencer puts it, the student can understand the ancient occult demand for brotherhood. If all things are individualizing sparks from one neutral source, then each is a brother to everything else. Oh, check that out. Check that out. I like that. Richard Tracy says it could relate to soul evolution while incarnated in the human form, and then when returning to the astral, will now have more to contribute as a result of those experiences. Christine Blue says, what you put in is what you get out. Can't make it more plain than that. Tutti frutti. Oh, Rudy. Oh, Rudy. A wop bop a loo bop, a wop bamboo. All right. If all things are individualizing sparks from one neutral source, then each is a brother to everything else. Christ tried to tell them. They wasn't having it then. They still ain't having it now. They hate themselves probably because they don't understand themselves. Obviously. Because if you knew what you were, you'd literally have no room and no time in your life to hate anyone or anything. Wop bopaloo bop, wop bamboo. Man is not to coalesce with, but to cooperate with all living things. Upon the causal plane of life, the principle of brotherhood is universal. Upon the form side alone is the primal oneness diversified and the sense of unity is lost. What does that mean? Well, we can look at this in the terms of the 5 planes. Physical plane, etheric plane, astral plane, mental plane, causal plane. Now the causal plane relates to the Akash element, and the Akash can be symbolized as a black egg within which literally everything exists. Once again, there is nothing that exists that does not exist within the black egg of Akash. So everything below the point of Akash, or we should say below the point of the causal plane, believes that it is separated. Air believes that it's air, fire believes that it's fire, water believes that it's water, earth believes that it's earth. People believe that they're separate things. Etheric bodies believe that they are individual currents. Astral bodies believe that they are individual emotions and feels and libraries of experience. And mental bodies believe that they are individual concepts. And that's to be expected because the mind cannot cognize itself, just like the tongue cannot taste the tongue. Right? The mouth can't taste the tongue. The mind tastes the tongue. So likewise, Everything that exists in the four lower planes cannot cognize what it's a part of. So what he says here is, upon the causal plane of life, the principle of brotherhood is universal. Upon the form side, which is the mental, astral, etheric, and physical, upon the form side alone is the primal oneness diversified, and the sense of unity is lost. All right, this is extremely high quality occult food right here. Make sure that you are digesting this. The unity buried in this diversity and hence unrecognizable by the young soul is seen in its true aspect as the sole reality by him who has raised his spiritual consciousness above the plane of matter. Ooh. Phone done got too hot. And the camera needed to take a rest. That's alright, we'll give the camera a rest. I gotta figure out how to set up this other one. Well, in any case, let's continue. Hakim Limidi, peace. So I'll read that again. The unity buried in this diversity and hence unrecognizable by the young soul is seen in its true aspect as the sole reality by who? By him who has raised his spiritual consciousness above the plane of matter. Above the plane of matter. Once again, what is that? That's the Akashic dimension. The fifth element. Above the mental, astral, etheric, and physical. Just like the tongue cannot taste the tongue, nor can existence understand pure consciousness. 49. Yeah, I'm gonna highlight that. Okay. 49. From the clash of material forms, inevitably results the spark. When we raise our consciousness above the concrete, we see and realize the universal oneness of life behind the illusion of evil. Again, like I said, there are no enemies. But of course you're not going to see that if you're in the midst of matter clashing against itself. In the midst, in the heat of the night. This realization is one of the first steps on the path of wisdom. We are to include not only the human family, but all nature in our bond of brotherhood. It is our duty and responsibility to use every natural element constructively for the good of the plan. If not, we overlook the bond of brotherhood which connects us with every part of the visible and invisible cosmos. All wanton destruction and carelessness respecting the rights of others all wanton destruction and carelessness respecting the rights of others generate inharmony in those who have failed to recognize cooperation as the most fundamental and sacred of their spiritual obligations. In the oneness, we find the ultimate of all manifestation. All diversity is destined to return again to its own source. Therefore, it is said that the life of the great outpouring has its beginning and its end in its own center. In the oneness, we find the ultimate of all manifestation. All diversity is destined to return again to its own source. All life is consequently symbolized by a great circle which returns again to that from which it came, a serpent with its tail in its mouth. This, however, can be understood in all its fullness only by those who have lived through the outpouring and found again the divine source. And after all that, we finally get to the mystery of the number 2. The number 2 is symbolic of the dual system of human thought, which views everything either from the standpoint of opposites or comparison. Things are judged in their relation to other things, but seldom, if ever, weighed and measured according to their own intrinsic merits. The mystic alone realizes that everything in nature is a law unto itself and can be honestly evaluated when judged by its own standards alone. The one outpouring reflecting itself in matter is called the 2. The one outpouring reflecting itself in matter is called 2. Again, matter, prakriti, matrix is simply a reflection. Of the data contained in the infinite unconscious. This is the first negative number, for when divided it leaves no remainder. All even numbers are called negative and feminine and are ruled by the moon. All odd numbers are called positive because an odd number cannot be divided without leaving the first cause, 1, in the center. They are, therefore, under the dominion of the first vibrant power, the sun. So we just mentioned here how odd numbers are ruled by the sun and are masculine. Even numbers are ruled by the moon and are feminine. Now this can also correspond with the Ida and the Pingala. 53. As 1 is called the number of the Father, so 2 is the number of Earth, the cosmic root substance or the base form. This is the negative pole of life, called by ancients the Divine Mother, in contrast to the vitalizing ray, which carries the title of Great Father. I keep referencing Prakriti. We know her as the Great Mother. The Great Father, of course, being Purusha, also known as Adam Kadmon. 54. People who are mastered by bodies, which are the expressions of matter on the various planes of nature, are referred to as negative. People who are mastered by bodies, which are the expressions of matter on the various planes of nature, are referred to as negative. They may be courageous, violent, and apparently very positive, but in all things where the body rules the life, they are negative. Hence, people who are ruled by appetites and passions, who are swayed by emotion and torn by the things of the lower worlds, are said to be negative types, while those who rule their bodies in wisdom and integrity are called positive. All true mystics and occultists are positive. How can you be an occultist if you don't have mastery over your body's urges and desires? Interesting. In all things where the body rules in life, they are negative. Desire. Swayed by emotion. Upset about Trump and the China dollar and Joe Biden and whatever else they talking about. $55. When the vitalizing centers in the body are nourished by the spinal fires descending through the black serpent wound, when the vitalizing centers in the body are nourished by the spinal fires descending through the black serpent wound round the famous staff of Hermes, man is said to be negative. Clearly that's a description of the chakras, right? Like we said earlier, the etheric body, which is where the chakra points are nourished and vitalized by prana. So what he said here is, when the vitalizing centers in the body are nourished by the spinal fires descending through the black serpent wound around the famous staff of Hermes. You've seen that picture before, the staff with the snake wrapped around it, which is a symbol of Kundalini. So he says, when the body is nourished by that power, while those who are, he said, those are said to be negative. Now on the converse, those who are raising these powers and unfolding the cerebrospinal nervous system are said to be positive, for they are nourished by the ascending white serpent of wisdom raised by Moses in the wilderness. As long as man is ruled by opposites, one of which is ever combating the other, he is incapable of true spiritual growth. He must first unify these two opposing factors, which, like two thieves, steal his powers of concentration. How about that? Consider what that means, being ruled by opposites. How far does that extend? As long as man is ruled by opposites, one of which is ever combating with the other, he's incapable of true spiritual growth. He must first unify these two opposing factors, which, like two thieves, steal his powers of concentration. I mean, it only makes sense. No matter how intelligent or how non-intelligent a person is, if you call yourself one political party and then somebody mentions the other political party and you get thrown into an emotional debate, that's you being ruled by opposites. It doesn't matter about the politics. Like, that stuff has never mattered. What matters is that people are engaged with it and people are acting on its behalf. The stuff is always going to change. It's not the content that's important. It's the context. It's the structure of being kept on an opposing side. Same thing with sports, right? Some people love a team and hate another team. Hate. How do you hate a team? The team scores. We got that point. There's nothing wrong with enjoying life, but what we're talking about is being ruled by these things. If a person's ruled by these things, there's Manly P. Hall says that we're incapable of true spiritual growth. Anything where there's two opposites that are combating against each other, how do you choose a side? If what we're talking about is the one, if we're talking about the fact that all things came out of one, how do you expect to reach the one when you're at war with the one? There are no enemies. If you're at war with the one, how do you expect to reach the one? He must first unify those two opposing factors. Is it possible to enjoy, say, boxing without really being attached to one or the other fighter? Is it possible to enjoy sports, not really caring who wins, just enjoying the game itself? Is it possible to enjoy politics and just enjoy the game itself without being attached? Is it possible to take part in life without being stuck? I'm asking you because I know the answer. 57. 2 is said to be the number of unconsciousness because the single spiritual power is broken or its flow impeded. It is also referred to as the number of contention because the two extremes of nature are always seeking mastery one over the other. Those of you who are wise occultists are listening to this part because you know that these numbers still relate to tarot. Too often, man fails to realize that domination on the part of either means the destruction of both. Too often, man fails to realize that domination on the part of either, domination, no matter what team wins, no matter who wins the fight, it means the destruction of both. For in slaying its opposite, it slays itself, since one pole cannot manifest without the other. Equilibrium is consequently the point of greatest efficiency in nature. Equilibrium is consequently the point of greatest efficiency in nature. Efficiency. 58. When the center of consciousness is thrown out of its true position, it is rendered negative and impotent. Thousands of occult students are negative and consequently incapable of growth because they have allowed themselves to be led out of their own true center of consciousness. Some people wander millions of miles, figuratively speaking, from their own centers of being and go off on endless tangents by following other people's advice. Both offender and offended lose sight of one of occultism's most important laws, namely the necessity of unifying all opposites and synthesizing all philosophies. That's what you're supposed to be doing. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Unifying all opposites and synthesizing all philosophies. That's what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing before Manly P. Hall wrote these words that my eyes saw. Or should I say before my eyes saw these words that Manly P. Hall wrote. He said that's one of occultism's most important laws. Synthesis of all opposites. Unification of all opposites. That's why I certainly don't bash any other spiritual belief system. Because within all of them lies the seed of the origin. All of them originated from the same source. Now, some of them retain some of the individuality of the source more than others. MC Maestro says, sounds like the description of Tantra in Tatwashuti and the Lover's card. Yeah, I was definitely seeing the Lover's card. 59. Man's chief trouble is that when he weighs anything, he also includes the human equation in one end or the other of the scale. That's man's chief trouble. And how many of you are guilty of giving spiritual things human personality and then becoming a victim to that? Oh, this entity must be mad, or this spirit didn't like me doing this, or didn't want me to do this, or this spirit, giving it some kind of human personification. That's a fast way to lead yourself into superstition and away from accurate interpretation. Because these things we're dealing with are not people, so they don't have people emotions. Man's chief trouble is that when he weighs anything, he also includes the human equation in one end or the other on the scale. Instead of weighing conditions as they actually are and remaining as he should at the point of equilibrium, his likes and his dislikes distort his judgment, which therefore becomes null and void. Imagine listening to a spiritual teacher, and instead of getting gnosis and wisdom, you get a bunch of their likes and dislikes. Imagine that. Imagine listening to some spiritual content, getting a bunch of opinions. Woo! I can't do that. But that's what a lot of people like. An excellent example of this is to be found in the political conditions of our day. For many hundreds of years, in fact, thousands, the world has been ruled by a patriarchy. Now, the general trend is towards a matriarchy. An Amazonian form of government may appear at almost any moment. Many people believe this to be the true solution of the problem of life. The occult student, however, with his broader vision, realizes that this is merely shifting the weight of rulership from one end of the scales to the other, and consequently, can never bring about the desired effect, namely balance. The superiority of either extreme destroys the harmony of the divine plan. And you'll hear this a lot with people. Whatever thing that's going on today, oh, I hate it, and it should be this other thing. Not realizing that it's not the specific thing that's the problem. It's the imbalance that's the problem. I gotta love it. Got to love it. Only when these extremes are blended, at least, to the stage of consecutive coordination, will religion, philosophy, or politics ever find an answer to their eternal problems. Since earliest history, first one end has been up and then the other, and humanity must suffer from this condition until it learns that the greatest good is wrought when all things work together. The number 2 is symbolic of discrimination, for it is the number of man's free will, which at this stage of his growth is not free, but is merely the power of choice. Understand the difference, folks. Some people got it very confused. For it is the number of man's free will, which at this stage of his growth is not free, but is merely the power of choice. Through experience with the opposites in nature, man is developing the power of discrimination, and by its application will remove much of his present suffering. Imagine believing that you have free will, but not having discrimination. Not having discrimination, which means that you're being manipulated and you wouldn't know the difference. You think that because you have a choice, that's free will. But did you ever consider where did those choices come from? And did you ever consider what inside makes you want to choose that specific thing over the other? Both of those are heavy, heavy influences. I could give you 2 choices that benefit me. Or you could be making a choice based on a traumatic experience. That isn't free will. 62. Those who would learn the mystery of the number 2 must learn how to use the power of thought to blend the opposites in nature. Can you do that? For the mind is the uniting link between God and man. Without thought, man is an animal carried away by the sway of emotions. Those who do not think are ipso facto not human. Those who are unable to discriminate between what is better and what is best maintain perfect balance as they walk between the pillars of opposites, are not thinkers in the highest sense of the word. There's a lot of heavy treasure in this chapter, in this book. Sheesh. "63. Man will learn how to choose in but one way, through knowledge of the two extremes. Through the knowledge of the two extremes." Swinging like a pendulum, the ego alternates both viewpoint and body from one life to another. Through this knowledge of opposites, it gains the power of discrimination and finally learns how to blend differences that weaken into unities that strengthen. Through the knowledge of opposites, the ego gains the power of discrimination and finally learns how to blend differences that weaken into unities that strengthen. Man, listen up. I hope y'all are getting this. This ain't your little run-of-the-mill cyclomancy. Whatever book they talking about. This is the stuff right here that once you get it, you don't need to buy 1,000,000 books. That's why they don't give it to you. Through his knowledge of opposites, it gains the power of discrimination and finally learns how to blend differences that weaken into unities that strengthen. Maybe one day. Let's continue. I think my camera has cooled off. Maybe I can cut it back on. Let's try it out. Yeah, there we go. Back at it. Okay. 64. Safe and intelligent judgment on any question depends upon the knowledge of the opposite phase of the thing discussed. And as a side note, if you guys have read the Qabbalah more than 4 or 5 times, this should sound familiar to the law of polarity and the law of rhythm and being able to transcend the principle of rhythm, because it's going to swing over here and it's going to swing over there. And the book talks about how if you want to change that swing, when it's over here, you got to visualize it over there, all the way over there, and then unify the two. If you got the Qabbalah, then read the principle of rhythm, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But he says here, safe and intelligent judgment on any question depends upon the knowledge of the opposite phase of the thing discussed. Judgment of an individual does not depend solely upon his good points or upon his bad points, but upon the blending of the two. If you are giving a learned discussion on the subject of up, be certain that you have considered equally the problem of down. People whose knowledge is limited to only one side of a question are unfitted to pass judgment on any phase of it. Be careful who you're getting advice from. Careful who you're learning from. Hell, Bobby Hemmett say, he who knows one book knows none. How can somebody teach you one aspect of a thing if they don't understand the other aspect of a thing? Now we back to guessing and theory as opposed to gnosis, wisdom. One more time. If you're giving a learned discussion on the subject of up, be certain that you have considered equally the problem of down. People whose knowledge is limited to only one side of a question are unfitted to pass judgment on any phase of it. This is a rule very frequently broken in nature, for the majority of people who talk with glibness concerning things have totally ignored other viewpoints, which may have an important bearing upon the subject. I mean, it's about useless to take advice from a bigot or a hateful person, especially if that advice concerns humanity, if it concerns people in general. The advice would be useless because the person's coming from one angle of something that actually has multiple angles, right? Somebody trying to teach you about nutrition, but they only eat bananas. It's one thing to, maybe dislike another thing, but to completely avoid it altogether and then try to go teach someone about it. Come on now. "65. Every element in nature has its opposite. In most cases, the opposite of a thing is the lack of that thing. Light is an element. Darkness is the absence of it. Knowledge is an evolved state. Ignorance, the lack of it. Good is a quality. Evil is the least degree of good." I like the way that he explained that. So, the same way that darkness is only the absence of light, evil is only the absence of good. As we evolve, we form a triangle out of the opposites by lifting our own center of consciousness above the plane in which lie the 2 points of our horizon. Whoa. There's your 3. There's your triangle. There it is right there. Understanding the rhythm of both ends and understanding you as the center. Man. I don't know, man. I hope that y'all are getting this, because this is actually some high quality stuff. Two opposites with you in the middle. Once again, like I said, with these spirits, man, these spirits are not good or evil. They're actually extremely neutral. But however you put yourself on that balancing point, that's what it becomes for you. That's why my experience with Andros was not like what was written in the Goetia. My experience with Asmodeus, my experience with all these spirits were not like what was written in these books. Because you are the central point of that triangle. You manifest what's in you and what you learn to do and how you learn to behave and how to think. Shit. I've had people ask, like, why the hell would you work with demons? Why the hell would you work with Satan? Why the hell would you work with Beelzebub? Well, the thing is, like, we can't talk. We can't talk because your definition of those things are not the same as mine. So we're not on the same page. And if we were, you wouldn't even ask that question. Because if Satan and the devil was what people say it was, absolutely nobody would do any kind of work with Satan or the devil. Right? Because, shit, they'd be utterly destroyed. And that's not the case. Why is that? Because if you understand Christianity, people have what's called a scapegoat. They take all of their personal negative qualities and cast it onto some character. They color this character with their own crayons. Anything bad that happens, they say, oh, there it is, there it is. Now, for someone who didn't come up in that culture, they don't have those same crayons, so they're going to color it differently. For some people, Satan represents liberation. Satan represents being able to be themselves in a world full of clones. They have a different set of crayons that they color this entity with. Now, guess what? The whole time we're working with elementals that have formed the shape of a Satan on both ends of the spectrum. Because what Satan actually is neither of those things. The real Satan, you can't work with. More on that later. But ultimately, any entity that we're dealing with, we color it. We are that third point of that triangle. Now, if you take your coloring crayons from somebody else, that's what you're going to be manifesting. If you experiment and get your own experience, that's what you're going to be manifesting. It don't matter what spirits you use. I'll just tell you that. It don't. You don't have to believe it. Matter of fact, it don't matter what you use. Even if it's peach soda. But maybe you'll figure that out. Maybe not. Let's get on to number 3. And before we do that, the way that he's going down on these explanations, I think that this might actually go a lot longer than I anticipated. We might have to break this up into 2 readings, because we still have literally 20 more pages to go. Alright, so how long have we been here? For 2 hours? Might go another hour maybe. What number do y'all want to go to? Tell me in the chat. Maybe we can break this up and finish it in like 3 days or so, Wednesday or something like that. Let me know what number we're going to get to. WT says he about to break it down in 3 and 4, yo. Alright. Alright, let's check out 3 and see how far we get. And if we got time, we'll go to 4. Alright, let's do it. The mystery of the number 3. Lance Benefield says, I wonder if Facebook is a more evil spirit than the Goetias. Well, that literally depends entirely on the crayons you've used to color in that shape. Because you'll never know Facebook. All you'll know is your experience with it. What has your experience been? Right? What has your experience been? Just like a person who's gone to church all their lives and has never had an experience with Christ. All that they will know of Christ is what other people told them and what conception they made up in their head. Perfect example. So unless you actually go out of your way and sit down and talk with Mark Zuckerberg and the people that manage that entity, you'll never know Facebook. You'll only know your experience. Just like you'll never know Satan or Jesus, you'll only know your experience of it unless you have an experience with them directly. In other words, unless you have an experience with these entities directly, you're working with elementals. Remember in those old cartoons where, like, say, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, or some little short characters want to get into, like, an adult thing? So they stack onto each other's shoulders and wear a giant trench coat and somebody wears a top hat and they try to all waddle to the destination. That's what's happening when most people are working with spirits. You're working with a bunch of elementals in a trench coat. That's okay. You can still get results from that. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, right? You're being fed upon by elementals. That's okay. That's not a bad thing. Everything has to eat, whether you like it or not. If you participate in any habitual behavior, if you participate in anything that is a repetitive pattern, that's literally a sign of being fed upon by elemental spirits, because they consume the prana generated from repetition. They consume on the frequency, and your frequency is how frequently you do a thing. So if you find yourself locked into any type of habitual patterns whatsoever, that's just a sign that you're generating sustenance for an entity on another plane. It's not a bad thing. It's how life works, right? We talk about the spirit of a fox, right? A spirit of a fox is sustained by fox behavior. So all the little things that foxes do, that's what gives life to the spirit of a fox. The spirit of the oak tree. There's a universal spirit of an oak tree, and that spirit sustains itself by what oak trees naturally do habitually. And because humans are a bit more complex, there's a whole lot of different types of archetype. That's why somebody can sit down and make a grimoire and say, this is the spirit of anger, and if you summon this spirit, you're going to get mad, or somebody's going to get mad. Because that entity is feeding off of that pattern of that repetition of anger. This is how this stuff works. Like, get out of Hollywood, stop looking at these movies. Like, you're not going to learn anything on no damn TikTok. You have to study and practice it yourself. Then you get this information. Man. And just like what he was saying, if you want to tune in yourself to one of these different radio stations, once you do that successfully, you begin to receive data from these sources, right? So if you've never had an experience with the actual thing, what you're feeding upon, or excuse me, what you're getting are elemental spirits who revolve around similar behaviors. There's an elemental spirit for people who call themselves Christians but don't know Christ. There are entities that feed on that. It's not a bad thing. You feed on stuff every day, right? Everything's got to eat. But if you want to work with the real deal, you got to tap into the real deal. Maybe that's too much. Maybe we just need to stick with the book, huh? Elementals in a trench coat. Okay, let's continue. Time crystals. "66. The number 3 is symbolized by the triangle, for it is the number of outpourings which radiated from divine being in the process of creation. Its basic principles are spirit, soul, and body. This trinity manifests in the world of form as thought, desire, and action. I remember Sivananda was telling Satyananda about service, and I'm pretty sure it correlated with those three. I think his was head, hands, heart, or something like that. Anyway, this trinity manifests in the world of form as thought, desire, and action, which are the concrete attributes of the threefold divinity. These three principles or forces mold the destiny of all living things. The three spiritual phases are the centers of life and consciousness, while the three bodies, or methods of expression, are media by which the spiritual consciousness of man expresses itself in the objective world. I like how he continues to explain. When he says bodies, he's talking about methods of expression. He's done that at least 3 times. I think that he really wants us to understand that when he uses the phrase body, he's talking about a method of expression. Spirit, soul, and body, which manifests as thought, desire, and action. And these things mold the destiny of all living things. The three spiritual phases are the centers of life and consciousness, while the three bodies are media by which the spiritual consciousness of man expresses itself in the objective world. 67. 3 is also the number of the blended opposites, for out of the duality of the two there is born a child, partaking of the natures of both of its progenitors, but being a manifestation of neither in full. That's good. That's good. Think of your 3 tarot cards. I'm thinking about the 3 of swords. Thinking about the 3 of wands. What does the 3 of pentacles look like? And then the 3 of cups. Thank you, Sunshine Chick. If you're enjoying this content, go ahead and hit that like button. Because this stuff happens few and far between, especially these days. This divine 3 is born in man as a result of the power of discrimination and the union of spirit, mind, and body. The secret formula for this accomplishment has come down to us in the secret of the Philosopher's Stone, composed of its 3 elements, salt, sulfur, and mercury. The triangle is the simplest of geometric forms. In fact, it might almost be called a geometric unit. And such it is in the world. For as father, mother, and child, it is the fundamental cornerstone of all expression, generation, and regeneration in nature. MC Maestro says, Icha, Kriya, Jnana, will, desire, and belief. Oh, that's right, the 3 of discs in the church window. Gotcha. Yeah, the Rider White, it's the worker hammering into the wall with the other 2 watching him work. Okay, right. Alright, let's keep going. 68. The number 3 is also known as the threefold path, for it symbolizes the highest expression of the 3 major divisions of human character. These 3 paths are symbolized by a philosopher, a priest, and a soldier. Occultism is the path of the philosopher. Mysticism is the path of the priest, while service is the path of the soldier. All life seeking union with its source is advancing toward mastery along one of these 3 great rays. Which path are you on? Hey, this looks like a good opportunity for a poll. C. Main, thank you. Thank you for that donation. Let's do a poll. And you don't stop. There we go. Which path are you on? So he says here the 3 paths are symbolized by a philosopher, a priest, and a soldier. Occultism is the path of the philosopher. Mysticism is the path of the priest, while service is the path of the soldier. All life, seeking union with its source, is advancing toward mastery along one of these three great rays. Lance Benefield says, I think we live all three in some way. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, physically, I have no choice but to be the path of the soldier. I try to serve when I can. Possibly emotionally, I live a life of mysticism. And mentally, certainly occultism. Let's keep going. 69. The 3 is also the number of the 3 worlds, which the true Kabbalist is investigating with his self-evolved powers. Self-evolved powers. It stands for the triple crown of the ancient Magus, who was king of heaven, earth, and hell. And of course, it represents the 3 grand centers in the human body: the brain, the heart, and the generative system. The triple scepters of the Egyptian kings, the triple tiara of the Dalai Lama of Tibet, the 3 domed roofs of the Temple of Heaven at Peking, all carry the same symbolism. Only when these 3 great universal natures are blended in harmonious understanding, each serving the other, and the 3 uniting to serve the divine, only then do we have the eternal triangle in man, which is symbolic both of his divine search and its consummation. Jacob Boehm, the great German mystic, said that with these 3 natures were 3 witnesses by which God was known to men. I like 3. Bina. 70. The number 3 is symbolic also of balance or equilibrium, for the triangle is equilateral, meaning that all of its sides are equal length, with its point upward to represents human aspiration and consciousness, rising out of form to union with its divine source. With its point downward, it represents the triune powers descending into matter to mold it into a semblance of the trinity of spirit. I don't know if you guys do Tatwa Shuddhi on a regular basis. Richard, I know you just got that book recently. I don't know, other people like Maestro do it on a regular basis. I'm curious, when you do Tatwa Shuddhi, do you visualize the fire element Tatwa pointing upwards or pointing downwards? I always do it with the triangle pointing downwards. That's just how I do it. But after reading this right here, I might experiment with switching between, because at the beginning of the exercise, you dissolve the tatwas. I could do it pointing upward then, and then on rebuilding the tatwas, it could be done pointing downward. Sunshine Chick says, reciprocal determinism, environment, person, behavior. Some similarities in social cognitive behavior. Cognitive behavior theory. MC Maestro says, downwards in 3D. Matthew Watson says, I visualize it downwards. Yeah, I mostly visualize it downwards. I don't think it matters too much, but everywhere else I see it upwards. And every now and then I think, am I doing it wrong? But then I remember, like, everybody don't have the same source, so it's more likely that they're doing it wrong. Let's get to number 4. Alright. Judging by how long this one is, this may be the last one for tonight. But if it's relatively short, we'll do number 5. And we won't have to wait until next Saturday. We'll do this next reading, I'm thinking, the next few days. We'll see. Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. I'll let you guys know. Okay, the mystery of the number 4. 4 is the symbol universally accepted to represent the path of accomplishment and the labors to be done. For being the number of form, and hence of earthly things, it is represented as a cube or stone within which life is imprisoned. Wherever this is found, it means that the labor of liberating life is the next thing to be accomplished. During involution, man assumed bodies. Now, since the point has turned and evolution is underway, man must concentrate his energies upon the labor of liberating life from its vestments of ignorance. So when you reached Chesed, coming down from the tree, the focus was gaining a form. Now as you ascend back up, the focus is relinquishing that form back to Mother. (72) 4 is the number of matter, because for our particular day of manifestation, matter manifests as earth, water, fire, and air. Action, vitalization, emotion, and thought. Notice what he did there. He just listed the 4 elements, the 4 planes of existence, and how consciousness expresses itself on those 4 planes. Now, most people think that emotions are water element. That's not entirely accurate. Why? Well, let's see. Because most people attribute water to the astral plane, and that's not correct. The earliest recorded system is a 5-fold system, which includes the etheric plane between the physical and the astral. A lot of Western sources completely skip the etheric plane, so you don't see it much. If you do, it's likely to assume the author might know a little something. So what he just did here was, he said, Earth, Earth, and he aligned that with action, because of course, it is on the physical plane that you communicate through action. Water, he lines up with vitalization. And why would that be? Water with the etheric plane. Because, number 1, water is the water tattva, which lines up with the prana maya kosha. And I said at the beginning of this video, the prana maya kosha is the body that is fed by prana, vitalizing element. The prana is the vitalizing element. When people talk about energy, we're talking about prana. And it's the prana that vitalizes not only the physical body, but the bodies above it. And this is also why elementals feed upon the physical plane. Because being in the plane of vitalization, they don't generate vitalization. That's what we do down here. Next, he aligns the fire element with emotion. And that would also be the astral plane. And of course, the air element, thought, mental plane. Hot tamale. Lance Benefield says 4, feminine number. Right, absolutely. Because like what he said earlier, the odd numbers are masculine, the even numbers are feminine. Why? Because when you divide the odd numbers, there will be 1 remaining. With the feminine numbers, there will not be. So the feminine numbers are the expression, the outward expression, the Shakti, Prakriti, matter. So 4 is the number of matter because for our particular day of manifestation, matter manifests as earth, water, fire, and air, action, vitalization, emotion, and thought. Science recognizes 4 basic principles as the key to all forms, which is built up of their compounds. These 4 elements are carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. The higher the plane of evolution, the more the life controls its own bodies. These 4 principles, however, form the cross upon which is crucified the spirit of life. 4 is called the symbol of crystallization and is also known as the number of impediment, being blocked. Reina Leona, peace. Good evening to you. So you're wondering where that secret 5th element is. Akash represents that which is unattainable to us through natural means. Akash, the 5th element, is represented by that which exists but is not recognized by our senses. Akash is not something you can see, smell, taste, touch, or hear. Akash is beyond all that. Which, like I said at the beginning, is why we need some type of middle thing to help us to access it. A middle thing that does have direct access, and we have direct access to it. Kind of like how in church you have to have Jesus to reach God. Not because somebody said you had to do it that way, but because this thing literally exists beyond your perception. The Akashic records exist beyond your perception. So you literally need a way to get there and a way to recognize it. A way to translate it. A liaison. So that aspect is what is crucified upon the cross of the 4 elements. So that's what he says here. The higher the plane of evolution, the more the life controls its own bodies. So at the highest plane, life controls itself. On the lowest plane, life is dictated over by the elements. So he says that these 4 elements, these 4 principles, however, form the cross upon which is crucified, the spirit of life. That's where the 5th element is. That's what has died for our sins. When they say that spirit has been crucified upon the cross of the 4 elements, that means that spirit, or the Akashic element, now has been crystallized into matter. The light has been turned into matter. Lance Benefield asks, is Akash an entity we exist in, a sacrificed goddess? That is one way to look at it. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at Akash is the undifferentiated elements. The elements before they are separated. The elements as one. The director of expression, the director of element, the spirit aspect. 4 legs and the 5th horn. The one that guides the rest. And that's the correspondence. That's the correspondence. The Akash aspect is not manifest. It's not anywhere to be seen, fire element. It's nowhere to be smelled, earth element. It's nowhere to be tasted, water element. It's nowhere to be felt, air element. At best, the closest you can get is hearing it. That's why it's so important to listen to occult lectures or to listen to mantras. That's why music can move you to places that nothing else can. '73. In astrology, a science well understood by the Kabbalist, nudge nudge, wink wink, 4 is symbolized as a square, one of the so-called evil aspects of a horoscope. You guys have heard that before? A square being a, what do they call it? Maleficent? What's the word? Malignant, maybe? I don't remember the word that they use in astrology to describe a negative effect. We grow natural family. Peace, peace. Welcome back to the book reads. I remember you, used to be here for all the ones last year. Right on. 40 shot kosher corver. Peace, peace. All right. What is the word? It'll come to me later. So, it merely means that the points where the square falls, crystallization has not yet given place to vitalization. The square represents us with a problem to be solved, and is therefore a great benefactor in spite of its oppression. Matter is always opposing its own vitalization because of its negation. Matter, symbolized by the cube block of salt in alchemy, is symbolic of the body, which, while unregenerated, seeks to smother and destroy the life imprisoned within. The square, therefore, is the symbol of the tomb, and this holy sepulchre is the tomb of matter, in which our own spiritual nature lies buried. This is the cross of 4 arms which man must carry if he is to reach the footstool of divinity. When our physical body is not properly taken care of, one corner of the square strikes us. When our emotions are not mastered, then the second corner of the square falls. When our vital systems are depleted, the third angle, as body crystallization, steps in, while our destructive thoughts react upon us as the fourth corner. When we have not been true to any of these, our nature collapses, and we are buried in the tomb of matter under the symbol of the 4. Yikes. Yikes. 74. By his thoughts, feelings, and actions, man slowly transmutes this square tomb of stone into a cube of glass, from which the light of spirit shines forth as through a protecting lantern. Get the image of the hermit from the Rider-Waite deck. His present duty is to cleanse the glass. For though we now see through a glass but darkly, sometime we shall know face to face. That's from the Bible. 4 represents the number of bodies and the work we must accomplish with them. They are useful servants, but hard taskmasters. All 4 of your bodies need to be in alignment so that they can be clear like a glass. He said when the physical body is not properly taken care of, we get struck by one of the corners. When our emotions are not mastered, right? That's the second corner. When our vital systems are depleted, right? And while our destructive thoughts react upon us. Notice he's mentioning those 4 planes, because what did we just see 1 page ago, right? Got to pay attention to it. He just mentioned earth, action, water, vitalization, fire, emotion, air, thought. And check this out. Physical body, action, earth, right? Emotions, not mastered. That is fire. Vital systems, revitalization, right? Depleted. That's water. And then crystallization No. Destructive thoughts. That's air. So he just told you how it looks when you have not balanced the 4 elements in yourself. Ooh, 1111. Thanks. See, nobody sends me 1111. It's only when I'm on here doing these book reads with y'all. Some people get 1111 every day. So check that out. He just low-key told you how to keep your 4 bodies in alignment, even on the most basic level. Even on the most basic level. Sheesh. Lance Benefield says, Trav, you gave me so much insights tonight. Gratitude. Awesome. Awesome. That's a result of the insights that I've been getting. I wrote them down as notes, but I need to go ahead and flesh them out before I forget this stuff. If you guys have ideas, write it down. Don't just say, I'm going to remember it. Write it down. Write it down. I'm telling you. Lance Benefield says, the corners of the earth. This is how they trap us here. Reverse magic. Ain't nobody trapped me. I'm not trapped. You can live in that framework if you want to. That's your right to do that. But I am incapable of being trapped. I'm here by choice. And I leave when the choice to be here is fulfilled. Who trapped you? Who trapped you? Right? That's the question you got to ask. If that's the metaphor you're going to go with, follow up with it. Who trapped you? And you better not say some Illuminati white man in a business suit. Or a demiurge. WT says, as to why Trav's book is right on time for this age of Aquarius. Yes. How to come into alignment in the most practical way possible without using fluffy language. If you haven't already, grab my ebook. It is available now. If you don't have the link, let me know. I'll post it in the chat. 74. By his thoughts, feelings, and actions, man slowly transmutes the square tomb of stone into a cube of glass from which the light of spirit shines forth as through a protecting lantern. Now these 4 bodies become something that you use to navigate through Akash, as opposed to getting beat up by every aspect of existence. Sheesh. Then he said, his present duty is to cleanse the glass. For though we see now through a glass but darkly, sometime we shall know face to face. 4 represents the number of bodies and the work we must accomplish with them. They are useful servants, but hard task masters. Hard task masters. The mystery of the number 5. 75. 5 is the hand of the philosopher. Oh, wait. Are we going to do 5? Wait a minute now. Uh-oh. What's popping tonight? Yeah, we'll do 5. We'll do 5 and then we'll wrap it up. We're going to do 5 and then we're going to wrap it up. Then maybe I can jump on Fortnite for a round or 2. We'll see. These folks been going to sleep early these days. The mystery of the number 5. 5 is the hand of the philosopher. It is made up of the 4 elements plus spirit. The 4 elements plus spirit. which, like the coordination between the human thumb and the fingers, cooperates with the four elements, but is not with them, for it works by opposition. 5 is called the Christ. And in the tarot, it is the Hierophant, or the priest, because it is the spirit of man rising from the tomb of matter. Now see, that also corresponds because I've heard somebody say that, well, judging by the birth of Christ, wouldn't that make him a Taurus? I've heard that before. I might need to check that. Anyway, those who have lived... Okay, yeah. The Christ. And I said that because the Hierophant is related to Taurus. The Emperor is related to Aries. The Hierophant is Taurus. The Lovers is Gemini. 5 is called the Christ, and in the tarot, it is the Hierophant, or priest, because it is the spirit of man rising from the tomb of matter. Those who have lived through the laws of the 4 and have mastered themselves have become the 5. Those who have lived through the laws of the 4 and have mastered themselves has become the 5. In other words, liberated from the casket of matter. You're halfway there. That's the halfway point. The geometric form of the condition is the pyramid, in which one corner rises from the 4 corners of the base. I like that. So in the 0, we saw the dot. In the 1, we saw consciousness shoot forward, right? That became the 2. The 3 is when that shot forward consciousness that makes a line has a third aspect pushing up, and that makes the triangle. The 4 makes a square, and what we find now is that the 5 lays the square down and pushes up a 5th, the pyramid. See how this is working? It's literally going from feminine to masculine, feminine to masculine. Oh my. The geometric form of the condition is the pyramid, in which one corner rises from the 4 corners of the base. When the 4 elements have become the pedestal upon which the spirit stands, as a city built upon a hill, and not with stone walls which close it in, then man has reached the spiritual number of the 5. That's good. And look, guys, if you really want to understand, if you really want to understand the numeric significance of Qabbalah, astrology, and tarot, this is a perfect book to study. Like, I'm serious, man. If you want to understand the numbers, if you want to understand the spheres of Qabbalah, if you want to understand the tarot, minor arcana, and some of the trumps, y'all, this book right here is breaking all the numbers down. Like, don't just think this is just a little pass the time. Let's waste a couple of hours and read a book. Nah, this right here is really breaking down the numerical significance of occult principles. I don't know what they talking about, but this right here, man. So when people are like, what does 3 mean? What does 5 mean? You'll know where that information is. It has nothing to do with angel numbers or whatever the hell we talking about on TikTok. Let's continue. Because once I start saying TikTok, I go off on a tangent. 76. Man's development is the harmonizing of his centers of consciousness with the external planes in the universe by attuning the lesser self with the greater self. Hence the symbol of the star. What's the symbol of the star mean? Somebody tell me what the symbol of the star represents. Ooh, camera's getting hot. CPU overloaded. Alright, well, I guess I gotta continue to the end before the phone goes out. Represents man, the shape of man. Arm, leg, arm, head. Allah. That is the point of, like I said, you're halfway there, right? That's the point where the microcosm and the macrocosm come into an alignment. Yeah. So, thank you. That's right. Yes, we're dealing with the 5 elements. Yes, we're dealing with celestial knowledge. Yes, we're dealing with the microcosm, but also the macrocosm. It is at this point that we can conceivably say that you can basically use 5 as a correspondence between man and God. 76. Man's development is the harmonizing of his centers of consciousness with the external planes of the universe by attuning the lesser self with the greater self. And that's exactly what he just said in that one line, right? That's what he said. He said the man's development is the harmonizing. We talked about this already. The harmonizing. OA says woman. And we can say woman too, right? The human being. Right? The human being. Head, arm, leg, or I should say arm, leg, arm, head. This expression of the divine, original human soul that has not only split itself into 2, but then further split itself into billions. Or I should say we perceive ourselves as separated. Alright, so our development is the harmonizing of his centers of consciousness, right? The chakra points, or the subtle bodies, with the external planes in the universe by attuning the lesser self with the greater self. Mystical Qabbalah gives plenty of correspondence to be able to do such a thing. The tiny spark thus gains the ability to speak to its parent, the great spark. All this comes when the life is freed from form. When the life is freed from the form, not by destruction of the form, but by regeneration of the bodies, a process symbolized mathematically by the freeing of the one from the 4. 77. If our minds are blindfolded, if our minds are befuddled or unbalanced, we cannot comprehend the mysteries of God. If our hearts are filled with misgivings or passions, we cannot have the divine compassion of the Christ. If we have expended our vital energy and wasted our substance in riotous living, we cannot attune ourselves to the living planes of the eternal. If our bodies are crystallized and broken, we cannot perform the daily labors that give us a right to our position in the great plan. These 4 bodies are our cross, upon which the one is crucified. Buried in materiality, we only see the 4. As we revivify and harmonize this cross through right living, then the one shines out and man becomes the divine 5. This is perfect. 78. When the one dictates to the 4, fear, selfishness, and egotism disappear. In their place is one who is great because of utter simplicity, great with the faith of a child and the wisdom of a god. Then the spiritual man, the one, is robed in the purified garments of the 4. But this great mystery, like all other true mysteries of the Qabbalah, must be lived before it can be understood. Study and practice together create gnosis. The fact that his name or birth path may be similar to any of these numbers means nothing to the true Kabbalist. Oh, I'm a life path 6. I'm a life path 5. I'm a life path 4. Means nothing to the true Kabbalist. His conscious understanding as the result of having experienced these truths means all. Only those who have lived life through and have risen above life and its uncertainties can truly comprehend the mystery of the number 5. Sheesh. Sheesh. Okay, good stuff. Alright, so check this out. Gonna pause it here as part 1 of part 2. And then we are going to continue a little bit later because I'm gonna be honest, this was a lot to digest. A lot of good stuff too. Worthy of going back. I hope you guys made highlights yourselves. But yeah, we'll read this next time. 10 pages. And like I said, we'll probably do that through the week at some point. Okay. All right. All right, what do you guys think? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you completely indifferent? Lance Benefield says, my question always been as a child, how could we evolve if we hate any being here on Earth? That's a good point. Because it's not even the thing that you're hating. To have hate in your heart is a hatred of self. Just to have it. Because you got to remember, when we're dealing with the higher planes, specifically the astral plane, it is the plane of emotion. And what that means is, it is raw emotion, pure emotion. It doesn't matter what you have emotion for. It doesn't matter who you love. That's not your soulmate. Your soulmate is the fact that you can love and that you express and feel love. That's accessing the astral plane, the emotion itself. It doesn't have to have something connected to it, just like gratitude. You don't have to have something to be grateful for. You can just be grateful. You don't have to have something to be happy about. You can just be happy. That's when you're tapping into the source of these emotions. But to attach it to a physical thing, you're literally setting yourself up for failure, because everything in the incarnated dimension has to perish. It has to. But to access pure emotion just as it is, without needing something to trigger it or symbolize it, now you're starting to tap into the higher planes. And this is how you use emotion to make things happen in this world. Let me see these results real quick. It looks like occultism has won by a landslide. 12% says soldier and service. 36% says mysticism and priest. 52% says occultism, philosopher. And somebody else just voted. I get it. Yeah, this is pretty amazing, guys. And this is corresponding with some of the stuff that I'm putting in my next book. Man, I wrote that first book, and now I am on fire. I'm already started on my next one. The entity that I'm working with told me that I have 30 days to get this thing done. So let's do it. This one I'm going to make printed. It's going to be printed. No PDFs. No PDFs. And I tell you what, I'm not bringing information that you've already heard before. I'm bringing something brand spanking new. I'm not making another rehash. This isn't going to be another Goetia or another Qabbalah book. This is going to be something fresh out the Akash. Fresh out the black egg. You'll see. You'll see. What will it be about? Okay, but more on that later. All right, time to go. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being thirsty for this knowledge. Hopefully you find a way to put this stuff to use, right? Because it's not just about the study, it's also about the practice. How can you take this information? Oh, sweet. Number 6, he's talking about Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma. Nice. But yeah, how can you take this information and make it practical? Wolfenserian777 says, was your eclipse right to connect with your alien friend who's heading to Pluto soon? Wow, I didn't think that those two dreams connected, but in a manner of speaking, I guess we could say yes. I certainly did connect with somebody who ain't from around here and brought with them a lot of stuff. Some of it cannot be used because it is too out of this world. A lot of it can be used, and I'm looking forward to that. I mean, we could say Pluto if we're gonna relate Pluto to the Akashic or the causal realm, right? Because all the planets are just representatives of what actually is. Alright, time to go. Read this chapter. Go back to the video. You should have the book by now. If you do have the book, highlight. Study this. Like, this is real stuff. Like, contemplate this. Think about this. Break it down yourself. See what kind of insights you get out of it. This is really good information. And we'll conclude next time. Alright? Yeah. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you guys. Peace.